Have you ever brought a new team member on board, you train them, and just when you think that they've got all of your processes down, what ends up happening is they end up unproductive, or even worse, they end up leaving. Look, I get it. It's not just a setback. This is a full-blown punch in the gut. You spend all of these hours training and mentoring and investing in the potential of this new hire, only to end up back at square one, really sifting through resumes again and cycling through this exhausting process. But what if I told you there is a blueprint, a proven system that not only retains new hires, but rewards them, and in turn rewards your entire business? So in this video, I want to unpack your guide to training your first employees, so they're not only just filling a seat in your company, but they're actually driving your business forward. I want to walk you through my step-by-step process that transforms a typical employee onboarding into a strategic, engaging experience that makes your new team members feel like they're part of just something more exciting and a lot bigger than what they actually thought they're signing up for. I should also add that this system works great for hiring contractors, part-time workers, full-time workers, VAs, the whole nine. And it's crazy useful if you haven't hired anyone yet, and this is your first time that you're gonna hire somebody, because this framework is gonna make it super easy. And also, just make sure you stick around to the end, because I'm gonna share with you a mind-blowing framework that is so effective. It not only slashes your turnover rates, but it's also gonna get your new hires, or turn your new hires into superpower players of your team, and it's gonna increase their productivity at least by a minimum of 50%. First, imagine the impact that this can have in your business. So if you're ready to stop this revolving door of employee turnover, and you want to start cultivating a team that actually sticks around, they grow with you, and they succeed with you, then you're in the right place. Let's go ahead and get started. By the way, if this is our first time meeting, my name is Emmanuel, and this channel is really dedicated to equipping you, the solopreneur/entrepreneur, with strategies that are not just theories, but actionable and effective systems. You see, over my career, I have onboarded hundreds of new employees. I've felt the highs of seeing new hires just become complete rock stars. And I've also seen horrible hires that I'm just like banging my head, just asking myself why. And through it all, and through a bunch of education and coaching and reading a ton of books and really trying to figure out how to get this to work efficiently, I've refined a very simple training system that's more than just a series of tasks, but it's more about just creating a culture that is really surrounding your new team member to build them up and make them last. Look, I've taken the hits, I've made the mistakes, and I'm turning every single one of them into a lesson that I can just pass on to you. By the way, I should also add that this isn't just some generic advice that is from a blog post that you might read or a prompt that you created out of ChatGPT. This is about giving you something practical, something super hands-on, and something that you can start implementing right after this video ends. Because you and I both know that in the world of entrepreneurship, time isn't just money, it's your most precious resource. And you really can't afford to waste it with a revolving door of team members that just won't stick around for the long run. So let's build out this foundation for new team members in your business that are gonna be just as ambitious and as resilient as you are. But first, I wanna talk about some common struggles that every business owner just seems to face whenever it comes to training new employees. One of which is the figure it out onboarding. This is where you hire a new team member and you give them a quick tour or lay of the land of your company. You maybe have them a bid to this manual that you give them, and then they're essentially left to their own devices. And this is a strict sink or swim approach, and it always leads to 1, a ton of confusion, 2, a ton of frustration, and 3, a bunch of wasted time. 2 is to not have a clear growth pathway. And this happens right after their initial orientation. Let's say a new employee, they come on board and then they find themselves without any guidance and they're struggling to see really what their future looks like in the company. And this lack of direction can quickly lead to them just being disengaged and turnover. And lastly, number 3 is the role expectation gap. And this is where we sometimes end up with a mismatch when we're trying to fill too many positions too quick. It's a great feeling to have when you're expanding your business, but it's not so fun when you're just hiring people off the street to do a job when they don't fit the requirements. And this gap, it's gonna lead to a bunch of dissatisfaction, not only for you, but for them. And eventually, let's be honest, they're gonna quit or you're gonna fire them. Now with the big problems and struggles out of the way, let's talk about building a better way to train and onboard. And it really starts with laying the foundation. And in my process, I really start this by building out a leadership checklist. Now, this is super important because it not only is designed to onboard, but also empower new team members and really get them really excited to be working for your company. I should also add, you should be doing this before you actually hire them, because the more prepared you are for their first day, the less time you'll need to waste on their first day. First, this starts with jotting down expectations. Look, your employees, they need to know what's expected of them. And when you clearly document this right in the beginning, you set the standard for their performance. All right, next piece of this, number 2, is that you gotta map out a growth plan. You need to show them where they are now and where they can be in maybe a year or 5 years from now in your company. Look, giving them a visual growth plan is a super strong motivator. And it also makes sure that you're aligning their success with your company's and your own. 3 is all about how you plan on investing in growing their skill sets. Look, some serious talk. When I was trying to just build out my business, the first thing that I thought about when hiring employees was that they were all motivated by money. But the fact of the matter is, they're not. They're actually more motivated by personal growth. So how are you going to create a culture of continuous learning? Is it through conducting continuous workshops, or is it having them sign up for courses, or maybe going through training sessions? Bottom line is, when you implement a growth strategy for their personal development, they're going to be more committed to you. And 4th is to create milestones and rewards. And you do this by identifying some really big accomplishments that you guys can celebrate together on their first day, their first week, their first month, and so on. And look, the bottom line behind this is that recognition is a super powerful tool. And you can use this to encourage their growth and really getting them to buy into your culture, and also get them to have really strong work ethic and strive for excellence. And lastly, it's to come up with a solid communications plan. Like, how are you going to be creating a good channel for a two-way back and forth conversation with you? And this is particularly important if you're working remote. So a couple questions to ask are, how often you're going to be meeting, and how are you going to be communicating daily? Is it maybe on Slack or Skype? When they can get support when they need it, they're going to feel more encouraged and invested to be working in your company. Now, these are just 5 very basic but very big ideas to start with, at least in my checklist, but I would highly recommend to use this as a blueprint for building out your own. Okay, so now that we've established this leadership checklist, the next step is that we need to outline an effective onboarding timeline. Because look, let's be honest, it's not just about their first day. It's really more about how quickly we can get them up to speed on their responsibilities and working at 100% efficiency. And this starts with their pre-arrival preparations. Like, before anyone steps into this new role that you've created, that you're hiring for, you need to make sure that you have everything that they need set up. And this includes things like their emails, their login credentials to software applications that they might be using, or access to accounts that they'll need or they might need to be able to get into really to do their day-to-day. And by the way, one of the best applications that I use for this to just make things easier in my world is, instead of having to keep a sheet of all these logins and passwords, I just use LastPass. All right, the next thing is that we need to outline their first day fundamentals. And the first day fundamentals is it's not just about paperwork. It's more about getting them really immersed into your culture. Have a plan to introduce them to your team. If you're working remotely, in particularly, you might already have like a chat system with all the other team members. Well, shoot them a shout out and let them feel welcome inside of your general chat. And if this new hire is a new hire in office, then it would make sense to be walking them through your office and then giving them introductions to everybody around. And by the way, if this is your first hire, then it would also be a good idea to maybe create a video, really just outlining your backstory and how the company came to be. All right, next is to identify their first week goals. By the end of the week, they should be able to do blank. Key here is to make the goals small and achievable to really help boost their confidence and give them a sense of accomplishment. Small wins make a massive difference. Next is to identify their first month's milestones. And that really means at this point, you should have already given them some more responsibility or even more complex tasks. Like, really ask yourself the question, like, after month 1, what tasks or what systems or what processes should they have ownership of? And at the end of the month, how are they doing? You got to evaluate them. And I should also mention that your 1 month mark is your line in the sand. This is your way or your indicator of knowing if this is a person that should stay for the long haul or if they should go. Oh, and if they do need to go, don't be the nice person. Just rip the Band-Aid quick, because the bottom line is, being nice doesn't really help your business or your bottom line. I need to also add that this onboarding plan that we're going through now, it needs to be a living document, and it needs to be approved every single time you hire someone new. And that's really because you're going to learn things about yourself and your company that will make this process a lot easier and a lot more streamlined. By the way, we have a way more detailed version of all these frameworks that I'm explaining to you here inside of a program that we call Leverage. We actually go deep and really dissect your onboarding process and then help you kind of rebuild it from ground up so that it flows better, it's a repeatable process, and it's a heck of a lot more efficient on your time. So if you're kind of curious about how that works or what that looks like, I'm dropping the link to book a quick 10-minute brainstorm session down below. Let's just have a quick conversation. Don't worry, it's not going to be a sales pitch or anything like that. We just want to learn a little bit more about your business and see if we can help you out. Now that you've got your onboarding timeline laid out, let's now talk about optimizing your training. And this really starts first by really taking care of the boring HR stuff that no one likes to do as a business owner. We're going to want to try to see if we can source that out. And I would recommend consider using, different systems or online applications like Bamboo HR or Gusto or PayPal or Time Doctor or Toggle, just to name a few, so that you understand how you're going to be paying these people or how you're going to be tracking time and making sure that all the legal stuff is all, lined up and all your ducks in a row. Second is communication. I mentioned earlier, how are you going to be communicating? Are you using Skype? Are you using Slack? Are you using Microsoft Teams? How are you going to handle day-to-day communication? Is it going to be through one of these platforms? How are you going to get updates? Remember, the key here in terms of having a really good culture is to have open lines of communication and a quick and easy way for your new hires to get responses so that they can feel engaged and feel like they belong. Now, third, and really the most important, is where are you going to house all of these trainings? And it starts with this one very simple rule. One of my mentors, good friends, told this to me and it just stuck. It is, what is repeated should be recorded. So if you're having to teach your process for every new hire, instead, what I recommend doing is recording your process once and then make your new hire watch it. A really great application to do this is Loom, because at the end of the day, it's not just about you saving time, it's about creating an onboarding experience that's interactive and more personable. And your new hire should be able to watch these videos or these SOPs, learn this task, and if they need to a quick refresher, or they need to understand better how to do this, rewatch the video and then just come to you when they have questions. By the way, pro tip, and I got this from one of my mentors, Dan Martell, if you decide to promote a new hire, then one of the best things to do to make sure all of your trainings are up to date is to get the person that you're promoting to re-record all of your training videos for the next person and make it their job to train the next person so that you essentially don't have to worry about that whole process anymore. All right, the last piece of this is that you need to house all of these trainings and tasks somewhere. So there's a couple of applications that I recommend, one being Asana. That's the one that we use around here, but you can also use apps like Trello or Monday. That way you can track progress, and then you can also see a visual roadmap of what they're working on and how they're doing. And this also makes for another easy communication tool, because if they can interact with you and they have a question about a particular topic, they can just comment it on one of those threads. And that way, those responses that you give them don't get lost in a company chat. By the way, if you found some value in this video so far, please make sure you click that like button, the subscribe button, the bell icon, all that good stuff. Okay, so remember how I told you earlier about this mind-blowing strategy that really slashed my turnover rates and boosted my productivity by over 50%? We've arrived to it, and it's a game-changing tactic. It's really two things. It's implementing an employee scorecard and consistent monthly one-on-one meetings. Okay, let's first talk about the employee scorecard. Now, an employee scorecard is a tool that tracks the performance and progress of your team members across several key areas. And the framework, it serves really three main purposes. It aligns a new team member with their goals, really to your broader objectives for the business. It also gives them a clear visual representation of what success looks like for their role. And lastly, it really just gives them accountability and ownership over their work. And here's how you set it up. It's dirt easy. Create a page with 3 sections. The first section is for defining their key performance indicators, or their KPIs. You need to identify the metrics that truly reflect the impact of their work. These should be things that are both measurable and directly tied to your business's success. Second section is to establish benchmarks. Like, what are their clear and achievable goals for each one of these KPIs? And this really allows your team member to understand what good performance looks like. And then the third section, the final section, it's all about performance tracking. This is where you're gonna be updating this scorecard either daily or weekly based on the benchmarks that you've outlined in terms of your measurements. Now, once you have the scorecard ready, the next step is to conduct monthly one-on-ones. This is really your opportunity to connect the dots between your employee scorecard and your employees' day-to-day experience. By the way, these meetings, they don't need to be long. They can be like 15 to 30 minutes, super short. And here's my framework. I first start by reviewing the scorecard together. We discuss their goals, what they hit, and really areas for improvement. Next, we talk action items. Like, what can we do together to either maintain or improve performance? Then 3, we talk personal development. It's really the opportunity to do some realignment with the company goals as well as their own. Then if there's something that they still need in terms of continuing their education and helping them grow as an individual, like, let's talk about getting it for them. And then lastly, what we have is what's called a retrospective. And this is where we can discuss what stays, what can be removed, what can be revised, or really what can be improved. Bottom line, the true value in the employee scorecard and the one-on-one is to make these both living documents that are constantly iterated and improved, because if that's being iterated and improved, your employees are too.